Hayley, I am so excited to have you on today. So welcome to the 4Q podcast.
Thank you.
Oh, that's amazing. So, Hayley, obviously, I have so much I want to talk to you about today. But before we get into anything, we're going to go through our 4R process. So, we reflect, we redefine, we redesign, and we realign. For those who are new here, that is my 4R formula. But that's what the 4Q podcast is based on, is 4 questions around this. So, the first thing I want to reflect on is who you are. So, can you give us a little bit of a bio for those who aren't familiar with who you are?
I certainly can. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited to be here. I could chat manifestation and mindset all day, so I really appreciate the opportunity to have a chat. My name is Hayley, and I am a manifestation coach. That is my work role. Outside of that, I'm a mum. I have a 6-year-old daughter. One and done for me. One is plenty. I am a wife. My husband is Austrian, and I am a traveler. Travel is my life. I've been to 50 plus countries, and I have a little mantra for myself, which is I want to have a country for every year of age. So I'm a little bit ahead of myself at the moment. I'm 50 plus countries at the moment. So that's kind of what lights me up. So family, friends. Basically, I'm all about the fun things in life, which is kind of how I got to be where I am now.
Amazing. Well, yeah, and we will get into that. But I think that's the thing, right? Is that I always talk about, as someone who works in the burnout space, is that we often lose that fun and that play when we're adults. It's all about, work and kids and this and that. And, I love that fun has led you to this, because fun also leads to the manifested life, which I believe, you've got to feel good. So, and travel's obviously a big part of that.
Yes, yeah, definitely for me. I guess the reason that I love to have fun is because that's what lights me up. And I found that when I am happy and doing the things that I love, everything else comes about from that, So when I was pushing in something that I didn't enjoy or doing something that I didn't love, I wasn't necessarily getting the same results, and it wasn't lighting me up from the inside to motivate me to do more, you see. So I really was like, okay, so listen, Hayley, what's going on is that when you do things that make you happy, everything else flows from there. And sort of that's how I got to where I am now. And that's kind of what I'm passionate about, is because we can get stuck on autopilot. And I see so many women, especially, who are going through the motions of life because that's what they have to do. And, they've got a job and maybe they've got kids and a family, and then they've got to run around. And then one day they wake up and go, wait, who am I and what do I want? And no, I don't even know how to get there. So that's what I'm passionate about, is bringing back that element of let's enjoy life, and what do I want my life to look like?
And I think that's the thing too, is that it leads to a life of authenticity, I read this study about where they actually studied waves coming out of the human body. And it was interesting that more than love, more than joy, the highest frequency waves, and if you're into manifestation or whether you're just into psychology and science, this all aligns, is that
Yep.
when you vibrate the highest is when you're living in
Yep.
authenticity, when you're saying something that's truthful, when you're living something that's truthful. And I think that's the thing, is that when you're living in fun and joy, you are living what makes you light up, not Fred across the road, not what makes your mum light up, not what makes your kids light up even, but what makes you light up. So I think that that's so amazing. I actually was going to mention to you as well, while we're talking on this, is, with the fun and the travel, my highest earning months this year have all been the 3 months that I had big trips. I was
Oh,
Yeah, I was in Thailand, and that was a really big month for me. Then I was at the Gold Coast with my family who were down from Canada. So again, traveling's in our DNA. My dad used to work for the airlines, right? And then, and then, I went to Canada's for a month with the 2 kids, which everyone thought we were mad, right? Why go to Canada with a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old, 14-hour on the plane? But it was the most incredible experience for them and me.
yeah.
Even if they don't remember it, they're going to learn, okay, it's important to prioritize like experiences rather than material things. That's the message I want them to get.
Yes, but also it's important, I think, for you. That's a memory for you, you know. So I think, especially as
Yes.
mums, we go, oh, they won't remember it, so we won't do it. But I think, because I bring my daughter when I travel a lot, I think maybe she might not remember this, but I've got that memory of her and
Oh,
with her, you know. So I mean, she's starting to get to the age now where she does remember, but I've got those memories and they're important to me. Do you know what I mean? So it's
oh.
nourishing me and not just worrying about what she's going to remember.
Oh, Hayley, such a nice reminder. I can feel myself going, oh, like I didn't even think about my memories in that equation. So I
Yeah.
can feel myself going, oh, that got me in the feels. Um,
Yeah.
so we've reflected on who you are, which I love already. We're already kindred spirits in that way. But tell me a bit about the redefine. So for usually when I talk about this concept, it's about redefining what's important in life and what's happened. But in this space, I really want to know, has there been a really hard moment that changed things for you, that really redefined your perspective on life or how you do things? What was that for you?
Well, I guess like most people, there's been quite a few.
Mm.
But I guess one of the biggest ones for me, so before I was doing this, I was in, let's say, the corporate world. I was working for a not-for-profit. I had a large team. I had a large portfolio. I was doing fundraising for a large charity. And I knew that I needed to go overseas. I knew that I wanted to work overseas and volunteer overseas because that was something that I wanted to have in my life. I'm all about the experiences. So I did that and I left Australia and I came back 6 years later. But the point is that I was doing what makes me happy. So I went overseas. And then I met my husband when I was living in Thailand. And then I moved to Austria and we had a baby. So the point for me was that I had a premature baby. So I had a baby who was 3 months early. So we spent 3 months in hospital and then another 3 months before I could get back to Austria because she was born when I was on holidays in Australia and my husband was back home. So
Mm.
it was a very, my mum was with me, which was amazing. So I gave birth in Australia, and then 6 months later, I went home because we were living in Austria with the 6 month old. So I'd left with being pregnant for 4 or 5 months or something, and then I came home with the baby. So after that, I really realized that, I mean, I knew that I didn't want to go back to climbing the corporate ladder because I'd done that, and that had, for me, I ticked that off. And I was like, okay, we're only going to have one baby and I want to enjoy every second of her. So what can I do that lets me have as much time as I can with her? So it was really a reminder, a bit of a universal reminder for me, I guess, of this life is about connection and family and happiness. And you need to find something that you can do so that you are around your family and supporting them and that sort of thing all together. So that was a big thing for me. So after she was born, I sort of became a stay-at-home mum. I mean, I was working, doing my own thing, but I wasn't going into an office and I wasn't being that corporate person anymore. And it really changed my identity. And I really had to go, okay, who am I now? What am I doing? Because I guess like most of us, the corporate life or working is a big part of our identity. So I guess that was a big moment for me, redefining who I am.
Oh, I can't even imagine what that must have been like. Can you talk us through, I guess, a bit of the feelings and emotions and just the headspace you were in when having all that happen in such a short amount of time? For those who don't have kids, I did not understand the difficulty of a preemie baby until I had my own child, and he wasn't premature, but he had to be in the NICU, so the neonatal intensive care unit. And it was probably one of the most traumatic things I've ever gone through. And I was only there for a week, let alone a premature baby where it's weeks on end and all of that. It's something that I think we don't talk about enough, that difficulty with preemie babies, just that part, not let alone having to go back to Austria and your husband's not there and all of that. Can you talk a little bit more about that experience for us if you feel comfortable, obviously?
Yeah, that's fine. I think you're right. I think people don't necessarily talk about it. I guess it's one of those things where you don't want to scare people off, but also
Yeah.
I had no birth classes. I had no idea. I hadn't done anything, I hadn't even had my gestational diabetes test because I was so early. So for me, it was a real I guess I was thrown in the deep end basically with being a mom and having a baby and all of those things. And it really was going through the motions every day. Just get up and go. Don't necessarily feel too much because you'll fall apart. But I must say that, the we spent a month in the NICU and then 2 months in the special care unit. So 3 months in hospital all up. But the nurses are amazing and the doctors are amazing. Not only do they look after the babies, but they really focus on the mums as well, and there's a lot of support that's offered. However, when you're in that place, you're not necessarily in a position to take that up because you can't even think about doing anything else than going and seeing your child, every single day. So it is
Mm.
hard, and it really shocked me into motherhood, I guess. And I couldn't, enjoy my baby for a long time, and I remember taking her home one day and I was staying with my mum because we were living in Austria. So we stayed with my mum for 3 months till she got big enough to bring back on a plane to the other side of the world. And I was watching her. She was, basically at her actual due date. So she was 3 months old, but she was,
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
was past due. And she was lying on the carpet and I just burst into tears. And I remember thinking, I've never actually enjoyed her. We've been together for 3 months, but I've never actually enjoyed her. I'm constantly thinking of, is she okay? Do I need to do anything? And making sure that literally that she's breathing and that, her heart is beating, all of the things that, most mums should never have to do for their kids. And so that experience really changed me and really made me think, okay, well, what is important to me? I don't want to put her in daycare now. We've just gone through this and I don't want to just leave her. So yeah, it was a really big thing in our lives.
Yeah, amazing. And amazing in the fact that not that you went through that. Obviously, that was just, I can't even imagine. But the fact that you use that experience in a way to actually go, what is important to me? And reflecting on the fact that I want to enjoy this part of life and I don't want to have to be forced into corporate world and daycare and feeling guilty and all of that, all of the things that most of us have gone through. I remember, putting my youngest in daycare and feeling like the worst person in the world,
Yeah.
even though it's a very normal thing in Australia, right? It's just heartbreaking, but obviously you've used that in such a incredible way to sort of redefine things for you. So it sounded like at that point you knew things had to be different. So I'd love to know, like, you're redesigning. How did you redesign your life after going through that and having to go to Austria with your baby on a plane and the chaos? I can't even imagine what that must have been like. What are the tools that really helped you figure out what you want to do and start living your life in a way that was more aligned with where you were at?
I think one of the biggest things is giving yourself permission to change and realizing that the identity I had before is just a part of who I am and it doesn't have to be who I am going forward, So I was that corporate woman. I was traveling and going to conferences and working 60, 80 hours a week and on the weekends. And, I had a great job and I loved that. But it took me a while to understand that I don't have to go back to that to be who I am. I just have to start to redefine what I want and who I am. And I did that by, like I said before, doing the things that made me happy, and I'm lucky
Mm.
that my husband is amazingly supportive and he loves it when I'm happy because it makes everybody else happy, So I started just really slowly and, I spent a lot of time with my daughter, well, our daughter, when she came home and, and then just sort of thought, okay, how can I surround myself by people who are going to support me and support this new identity that I'm creating for myself, because like you mentioned that, you put your daughter in daycare and there's that guilt and all of those things. There's also the other side of me saying, well, I'm not going back to work full time. And people saying to me, well, when are you going back to work? And I say, well, I do. I work for myself. I just don't go to an office like you. But also, if I didn't, and if I chose to be at home, what does that have to do with you? You know, that's my identity and what I'm choosing for my family. And that stigma around both sides of it is really hard,
Mm.
you know?
You
So
can't win either way as a mum.
you can't. So it's about accepting the choices that I make. And if my family and my friends are accepting of my choice, even if they're not, like as long as they're okay for me and my family, then that's what I need to do.
That's incredible. You know, I think that that really speaks to the courage that you took, because I think when we form our own identity, whether that's, you know what, I'm going to be someone that works for myself, I'm going to be someone that prioritizes XYZ, there's going to be people who go, oh my gosh, I love that for you. And I feel that too. And then there's going to be the people who know, you know, the version 2 of you who aren't quite caught up to version 11 of you, who are going to judge you and go, we met when you were this person and now you're this person and I don't quite feel it anymore. And that's hard too.
Yeah, because they're losing that version of you that they knew. So they have to adjust into this new version of yourself. And I think that's why some people do lose friends or friendships fall away when people change. But I think it's really important that we do, like you said before, we're authentic and honest with ourselves, because otherwise it's only ourselves that we're making unhappy, you know?
Yeah, amazing. And speaking of which, part of this redesigning your life was becoming a manifestation coach. And I want to ask you about this because that's not necessarily a career that we're taught to have, you know. So, how did you go from working in corporates? You know, I've worked in many not for profits, and, you know, they haven't been the healthiest of atmospheres either. And so, I'd love to know, how did you go from working in corporate and doing all of that to having a baby to moving to Austria to becoming a manifestation coach? Because that is the juicy part I want to know about.
Well, I guess manifestation's always been a part of my life. I just hadn't put that sort of label on it, you know. And I always remember
Mm,
people saying to me, how did you get that? Or how did you do that? Or, you know, why can you travel? And I remember I was in Austria and I was at a conference, and I remember somebody introduced me and they said, oh, Hayley's one of those people who's lucky enough to be able to do anything she wants and create whatever she wants and work her way around the world. And I remember thinking, but doesn't everybody do this? Doesn't everybody do what makes them happy type thing? And so when we moved back to Australia from Austria, I remember consciously thinking, I know how hard it is to move across the world. So my husband and I, he said that he wanted, I said, one of us has to stay home with our daughter. One of us can go to work. Do you want it to be you or me? So he went back to work. Well, he was always working in Austria.
mm,
And I stayed home and I thought, okay, he needs at least 3 years before he can settle into a new country. And so on the 3 years to the day mark, I started just thinking, what am I doing? I was doing, my background is marketing and fundraising and writing. So I was doing some of that work still the whole time. And I started to think, well, what about me now? It's my time. And I couldn't work out why this was happening. And then I realized, oh, I told myself it was 3 years. So I was sitting in my subconscious and the
mm.
year mark went off. And so I started to think about what I was passionate about and what did I want to be doing with my day. And I love talking to people about what they want to do, and watching people get lit up basically by doing things that make them happy and make them, you know, feel successful and feel like they're achieving in life. And so I started to reverse engineer what I did to make myself happy basically. And I came up with 5 steps of manifestation. I dived into the reading and the, you know, all of the things, all of
Mm.
the manifestation things. And I sort of came up with my own 5-step formula that I was pretty passionate about, that worked for me. And so then I started doing some online coaching and a 6-week course, and it sort of grew from there. And now I have an online course, on a self-paced on-demand course, and it goes through those 5 steps and introduces people to manifestation, because there's so many myths about it and so much, you know, oh, it's all woo-woo and it's all fluff, or, you know, that's not real. And I think I have had so many examples in my life that it can't not be real for me, you know. So from something as simple as, I went into work one day and I'd been thinking about getting a new pair of shoes, right? So I wanted a pair of, at the time, this is I guess the early 2000s or something, I wanted a pair of black Converse. And I'd gone, okay, well, I'm just going to have to look for them at some point. And I hadn't thought more about it. And I walked into work and one of the ladies came up to me and she's like, Hayley, I think you're about my size. I've just bought these shoes. Do you want them? And she handed me a pair of black Converse. And I was like, oh, cool, thanks. And it wasn't unusual for me, for things like this. But that's not to say manifestation is all like this easy and everything is free. And, people are talking about manifesting jobs and houses. And it's not just like wishing something to be. There's a lot of work and that goes into the background. So I was like, how can I demystify this for people? And one of the things that you talked about is that authenticity is a massive part of it, So I really want to tell people it's not as hard as you think. If you know what to do, you really can make anything happen. And so that's kind of how I got to where I am now.
Oh, that's incredible. And I often think the same thing too, is that I didn't have the language to call it manifestation or the law of attraction or the law of assumption or all these things. I just used to know, I knew what I wanted and I knew I was going to get it. There was a part of me that goes, this is going to happen. And that's all it is. Whether you want to come at this from a psychological perspective, if you're more analytical and scientific, or if you want to get on the woo-woo train with Hayley and I, it's this feeling of, yeah, that's doable for me. That's my life. I can have anything that I want as long as I put my mind to it. Or, there's no barriers. Why not me? I think that's the other part of it, is that why not me? Why can't this amazing thing happen to me? And, for those of you who are either want to dabble your toe in this or get into this, you can listen to my other episode on when I went and saw Abraham Hicks, who is a big law of attraction person. But basically, once I started really believing in anything I wanted and visualizing what I wanted and getting clear about that, and then going, that's done. It's already done. My life has changed tremendously in so many ways. And can I just share a quick example that I've been meaning to share for everyone that I haven't yet shared? Is that all right?
Please.
So recently, for those of you following along, we were in Canada, and I was taking photos on this area that I've been to before, but it meant something to me because, again, I went there with my dad a long time ago and it just felt really special. Anyway, it was the very last day of our holiday. So we were flying out, I think either that night or the day after or whatever. So it was the very last day. I had all my photos, all my videos on there that I hadn't yet uploaded to Dropbox yet. So whatever, I was on my own taking photos, and my phone, I felt like something pulled it out of my hand. I don't know what happened. It flipped out of my hand down a cliff. And at the bottom of the cliff was like where the ocean was splashing into. So the tide was coming in, basically. It hadn't been in yet, but it was there. Anyway, so there was this bush there, and I'm like trying to scribble down and realizing how dangerous this is. I'm like, nah, it's not even worth it. And then this guy comes along, and I was like, I've spoken to him earlier on this trail, and I was like, oh, he's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I think I've dropped my phone. And he's looking, and I'm like, please, I promise it's not worth you kind of risking your life for a phone. Like, who cares? Whatever, it is what it is. But I was devastated for a moment because, I had seen relatives I haven't seen in a decade and may not see for another decade, older family who might not be around. So there was this huge part of me that was like gutted. Anyway, I walked off, found the kids, found my husband, and just kind of sat away. And just for a moment, I just sat there and just imagined what it would feel like if I got it back. And I just sat there and I just really kind of visualized that for a moment, because I knew that sitting in this like crying, worrying phase just wasn't going to get me anywhere and just make the last day of this holiday awful. Anyway, I'm sitting there and I had my eyes closed for a minute and my back turned, and this guy, that same guy who tried to help me, he's like, oh, hey, I was looking for you. I've got your phone. And I was like, what? And anyway, long story short, like, he's like, yeah, like, anyway, he found it at the bottom of the cliff. I don't even know. It was like, what? And there was all these things that fell into place. It turns out he was actually a Ukrainian refugee in Canada, And so we are, you know, as you do, I was just so overwhelmed. I'm like, here's all the money in my wallet. I can't use it anyway because I'm leaving Canada anyway. Like, can we do anything? He's like, oh, I'd really love a lift to the bus stop. He was going to walk like 5 kilometers to this bus stop. So we gave him a lift and we did all of that. But for one reason or another, maybe we were meant to help him. Maybe he was meant to help me. Maybe it was just the worlds combined. But I feel like for me, that was a really kind of clear thing. And I don't, you know, I got a free ticket to Canada too. Like it was this weird combination of things.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to share that because I couldn't
Amazing.
believe that.
Amazing. Amazing. But it's so funny because I hear this a lot, and it's when people detach from the outcome that's when we get the result that we're looking for, the surrender part, you know, when we let go of what we really want, because when we do that, we're stopping that. When we let go, that thing no longer controls us. So when you had lost your phone, it was controlling you because you were sad and you were, oh my gosh, I'm really sad to be losing my phone. But when you let that go and accepted that I'm going to be okay without my phone, the universe is like, great, here it is back again, because you've taken that step. And that's what I love. I see it so many times, and it's just my favorite.
I think the thing that gets you from the analytical, psychological, like, oh yeah, that's bullshit side to the, oh my gosh, like, why did I not believe this before? Is you need to have an experience like that. And once you do, you will have hundreds of experiences like that, where you exactly like the Converse story, right? Like just things where you think about something, then you let it go, and then a second later it's there. It's just unbelievable. So, so I guess if we can finalize this with Hayley, so the fourth part of our sort of 4R formula is realigning, which is, you know, what do you do now to kind of stay on track, stay calm, clear, content? I'd love to know, what does life look like now, and how do you stay in alignment? What are some of the practices that you teach and what you do to help you kind of stay in this place?
I mean, I do a lot of what I teach, to be honest. I mean, just yesterday I was thinking about this because I've been away for most of September. I went to Germany for a wedding for 10 days, and then I went up to Darwin for 10 days. So September was very full on for me. And I got back and I was like, okay, I need to do all of the work. You know, I need to write the emails and I had website issues and blah, blah, blah. And I was forcing myself to do all of these things, and it just wasn't working. And I was like, Hayley, stop. You know, you tell people that when things aren't working, you need to step back and actually take stock of it. You know, things go in cycles, and at the moment you're not in that hard work hustle cycle. You're in okay, pause, recharge, re-energize yourself. So I need to do things like that, you know, and actually be more aware of what's going on around me. I mean, in my course, I talk a lot about intuition, because that's a big part of staying in alignment and staying on the right track. So I started to just, you know, I have to listen to myself and go, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel like what I need to be doing right now. And the funny part is people say, you know, well, if you're not doing the work, then you're sitting idle. But in reality, if you're actually listening, you're doing what you need to be doing so that your body can recharge, or you can make space for other opportunities to come in, you know. So I guess for me, that's kind of a lot of what I do. And I also like to surround myself with people who are supportive. You know, there's nothing worse than being around people who are negative about you or about what you're doing. So for me, it's about reminding myself this is who I am, and surrounding myself with people who are going to be supportive of me. You know, I mean, obviously I love doing all the reading of the manifestation stuff. I'm reading The Mountain Is You at the moment, and that's amazing. But remembering each day that I'm surrounded by people who love me and who support me is such a big deal. You know, I go to the beach, I clear my head, I'm only 5 minutes from there. So I take some time and some space for me, because I remember this is the life I chose. You know, enjoy it now, because, you know, 2 or 3 years ago, this is what you wanted, and now you're here. Don't let it pass you by.
Oh, Hayley, that's beautiful. And, you know, I guess one final question, because I was going to end it there. I think that's beautiful. But I do have a question that I think would really resonate with some of our listeners, particularly some of my coaching clients that I work with, where you know, because I work with a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, but I also work with people who are health professionals too. And there are a lot of people who want to lean into something that they're passionate about, but they are worried about what will others think or whatever, and they're not quite, you're saying like surround yourself with people who support you, but how do you do that when you're that in between? Because I think that's the thing, is I've met a lot of health professionals who do have a spiritual side, or they want to bring in nutrition, for example, but if you're, say, a physio, other physios will be like, well, why are you talking about nutrition? How do you lean into something when you're worried about what other people might think, or it might be a bit wooey for some, or, because I know you're saying surround yourself with good people, but how do you even do that when you're not yet, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, the reason we surround ourselves with those type of people is to start to normalize it, right? So that we can see, oh, someone else is doing it. So if it's possible for them, it's possible for me. So the simplest way is, if you have social media, most people are on social media, find someone who is doing what you want to do. Okay, find someone who is a physio who's doing nutrition as well, so that you can start to see every day in your feed, oh, they're doing it, oh, they're doing it, and then it becomes more and more normal in your brain. Okay, so I mean, yes, the ideal thing would be to go to networking groups or to go and actually physically see people in person, but a really simple hack is to just do it on social media, because your brain is absorbing that already, and your brain then goes, oh, well, they're doing it, well, okay, they're successful at doing that, why can't I do that? Do you know what I mean? Once you start to
Absolutely.
see more things around you, it's like saying, think about a purple elephant. You can't stop thinking about a purple elephant. Okay. So it's kind of the same thing with social media. Start to follow some people who are doing it. And if it's possible for them, then it's possible for you.
Amazing. Oh, Hayley, I absolutely love that. So, listen, before we go, is there any parting advice, parting words that you would love to leave to our listeners as we finish up today?
Um, Look, I sign all my emails off with the same thing, which is just go live your best life, because that's what it's about. So whatever your best life is, go and do that. Whether it's, you love your job, go be the best at your job. If it's your kids, go spend as much time with your kids as possible. So go and do whatever it is, take that step, do that thing, and live your best life.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And of course, I'm going to have it in the show notes. But if people want to connect with you and your message and just your positive energy, I don't know if anyone can feel this through listening to this, but Hayley's energy is very, uh, for lack of a better word, high vibe. I've got the quotation marks there, but she has this really positive, infectious energy. So for people who want to connect with you, want to connect with that energy, where can they find you?
They can find me on my website, which is Hayley Mill, Hayley, mill.com. And on there, I have a couple of freebies that get people started. I also have my Manifestation Essentials course. And on Instagram, hayley.j.mill. You can find me there, or Facebook, which is just Hayley J Mill on Facebook. And you can find me in any of those places hanging out and, yeah, talking about all things manifestation and fun.
Oh, amazing. Oh, well, thank you so much, Hayley. I've absolutely loved this chat. And for anyone listening, go check her out. She's got a wealth of exciting things. And like she said, just go live your best life. I think that's a very good message. Whoever's listening to this on this Monday or Sunday, wherever you are in the world, go live your best life. All right. Thanks, Hayley.
Thanks so much for having me.